Hello, and welcome to the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and for the next half hour, we'll be speaking with several very talented authors about their newly released books, what their inspiration was for creating their unique stories, and why it would be a great book for you to read and share with your friends and family. And now on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, a book I'm really interested to talk about, an intriguing story. The book is called Dr. Farid Fata, Convicted Out of Thin Air, The True Story by author Noel Benjamin. Noel, thanks for being on the show today.
How you doing?
Good. Now tell everybody a little bit about Dr. Fata and this story you've written.
Well, Dr. Fata, probably as about everybody knows, he's been on about every news station there was. He was convicted in 2015 for prescribing chemotherapy to patients who the government claimed they didn't have cancer.
Now, what got you interested in his story and made you decide to write this book? What inspired you?
Well, initially, Dr. Fata and I connected on a spiritual level. He's a Christian, and he was just kind of was going through a lot, so he connected with myself and some friends of mine. And after a while, I do some legal work and here and there, and he asked me to look into his case, and I did. And when I read through it, something shocked me, and it really changed my mind about what the government was saying that he had done.
Now, for those people who aren't familiar with Dr. Fata's case, give everybody a little background into how his case went as to what the government seemed to be doing to really kind of, for all intents and purposes, kind of railroad him.
Well, Dr. Fata, back in 2009, he was commissioned by Mr. Tom Price, our recent health secretary, who had just resigned under President Trump, to sit down and work up a thesis on how Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, would affect the country, would affect the medical insurance market. He was one of the first to come out and say that he didn't think it was going to enrich the insurance companies. He believed, and he published very, very loudly in the medical community and in Congress and among the Republican Party and Tea Party members, that this thing would actually destroy the medical insurance market. And we believe that that's why they targeted him. Because now we've got the University of Pennsylvania coming out, reviewed his case, and said they can't see what the government's talking about. He was ahead of the curve, but they said that they can't see where he did anything medically unjustified.
Now, when people read this book, who do you think is going to really gain the most from this? And what do you think people are going to really learn from it? How are their eyes going to be open to his case?
Well, being a conservative-minded Christian myself, I think there's a lot of people out there that, during the Obama administration, there's a lot of things coming out now that the Obama administration became known for using the Justice Department as kind of a political police arm against conservatives and Christians, people like that. And as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the stories of the century. The government called him the most egregious fraudster in history. But whenever you look under the surface here and you really see what these doctors, Ivy League doctors, are saying, he didn't seem to do anything wrong. Secondly, that means that the most egregious fraud wasn't necessarily carried out by him, but by them. They were handpicked by the president himself, some of these people, to prosecute him. And it looks now like maybe he didn't do a lot of this stuff.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to have the idea for this and then to finally have the book there in front of you?
Well, they've been great. They vetted the thing, of course, initially and looked at it. And I was a little concerned that they might look at the subject matter and realize that it's kind of explosive and may not publish it. But I think whenever they looked at the information supporting it, like I said, we've got Ivy League doctors here from prestigious universities who've gone in clinic and done clinical reviews on this, and they chose to publish it, and I was very grateful and very thankful.
Now, when somebody reads this book, what do you hope is the most important thing they get from it?
I think the most important thing that they get from it is to realize that if we begin to take things for granted in our government and not be what the Constitution allows us to be, and that's an observing public who's able to kind of police our government by putting the right people in there, watching out for what they're doing, making sure that we listen to reporters who are telling us the whole truth and not just going with whatever the status quo is, that then we can have a country of freedom. And I think that what happened with Dr. Fata is he was never innocent until proven guilty. He was guilty the moment the government said he was guilty, and everybody went with that. And if you look in the public forum, you don't see really anything clinical, anything scientific. They have a lot of patients out there talking about what they went through. I've had family members that went through the same thing. You'll never find a cancer patient that hasn't gone through horrible things. But to blame it on the doctor without beyond a reasonable doubt proof, I believe is very irresponsible and very dangerous.
I think it's going to be a very eye-opening story for people when they read it. The book is called Dr. Farid Fata, Convicted Out of Thin Air, The True Story by author Noel Benjamin. You can pick it up today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, just a few of the online sources, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And Noel, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good one, and God bless you.
And of course, God has a plan for all of us, and I think that's at the heart of this next book that we're going to be talking about on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable. The book is called When the Sun Shines by author Claire Blanc. Claire, thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about this book.
Well, it is a memoir of my life, just a small part of my life, but the major parts of where Christ was a big intervention in my life. And I guess I feel like it was inspired to write it to help other people, but I didn't know I'd be publishing it at first.
Now, I got to imagine that had to be, for me, I think it'd be kind of weird to be able to put all my my thoughts. Like you said, this is a memoir, so all your thoughts and everything that's gone on with you. Was that difficult to at first kind of decide I'm going to turn this into a book and put all this out there for people? Or was it easy because you really wanted to tell your story?
It started when I had surgery on my foot. I was very uncomfortable, couldn't sleep at night, and I always would get up in the morning and say, "This is the day the Lord has made. I shall rejoice and be glad in it." And that particular morning, I'm like, "Oh no, another day of pain." I said, "Nope, this is the day the Lord has made. I'm going to rejoice and be glad in it." And that's when the title of the book came in my head, When the Sun, S-O-N, Jesus, Shines. And so I got on my crutches and I got my big journal, was empty, and I got myself comfortable and I just started writing and writing. And to tell the truth, I mean, a lot of other things happen in people's lives, but these things just popped in rather easily, and I just kept writing, and within 2 days, the book was actually complete.
What are some of the things that, are there different types of scenarios and topics that people can learn from in your life in this book?
Well, and that's what I thought, that God wanted me to prevail, because it's a very personal book. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping it could reach out to anyone that might be feeling like maybe they've gone through some sexual abuse in their life. Maybe they've gone through death in their family, poverty, good versus evil, bad things that have happened to them that just didn't make any sense. Actually reach out to people that may have suffered a job loss that may have been very difficult for them. And I'm just hoping that by my story and how I was able to trust God and how He was with me, and as it says in the Bible, all things work good for those who trust God. And even though some terrible things have happened in my life, and I'm sure a lot of people have a lot worse things, of course, but how God got me through and actually made good of those instances. Now,
it seems like this is the kind of book that really has got a little something for everyone. Was it your intent to share all this so people know that they're not alone?
I think in the end, that's what it was. In the beginning, I just made a copy for each of my sons. And that's when all of a sudden my radio didn't work. My Christian K-Love radio I listened to every day, it didn't work. So I put on the TV Christian Contemporary in the corner. It flashed. If you have a Christian book and you're thinking of publishing, call Christian Faith Publishing at this number. So it was really Donna Chumley at Christian Faith Publishing that really encouraged me to get this book published.
Now, when people pick up this book, what do you hope is the most important lesson they learn and the most important message they get from reading When the Sun Shines?
Is that it's so easy in this world to get caught up in the bad things that they really have to just keep their eyes focused on Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and that this is in the end, that God is going to be there no matter what.
Well, I think that's an amazing message that I think everyone needs to hear. The book is called When the Sun Shines by author Claire Blanc. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, the online platforms, as well as their brick-and-mortar stores. And Claire, thank you for being on the show today.
And thank you very much, Chris. You have a Happy New Year.
And now in the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, an interesting book I'm excited to talk about because, you look on social media, you look on Facebook, you look on the news, it seems like everybody has a different understanding of who Jesus is and who Jesus is to them. And that is really at the heart of this next book. The book is called Jesus A through Z by author Jordan Bullard. Jordan, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about your book.
Well, absolutely. Well, a long time ago, probably summer Sunday back in 2012, I was in church one day, and my pastor was going over a simple question. Everybody likes who Jesus is to us, whether it be a thought, an emotion, a prayer, or something as a simple word. And I grasped that concept, and I was excited about it. I was curious if it ever has been in the book before. So I went home and did my research. I looked online, made a few calls around the country to booksellers across the nation that if they ever have heard about this concept before. When I couldn't find anything, I went ahead and took it on. So I ordered a dictionary online. It took about 3.5 months, and I read through the entire dictionary, highlighted every word I could use for this concept. Once I was finished, I typed them all out, brief definition, example sentence, 5 blank lines. And the point of the book, the reason why I write it, you as a reader, you write your own explanation using the name Jesus and how it's affected your life, past, present, future, using that English word that I provided.
That's such an amazing concept. How was it to develop this, have this idea and then to be able to form a book around it?
Oh man, it's 3.5 years of actually writing, and then about 5 years and going on 8 months of, the publishing process. It's just sticking with it. I mean, I never really thought it'd actually be a book because it seemed like it never ended, because the example sentence for me took forever, because not only did my vocabulary broaden, I'd had to figure out what every word that I didn't even know existed in the English language. I had to look it up, try to see how I could use it in a sentence, for the reader, for the book, to help people understand if they decide to take this on. So that was, one of my main focus. Well, another main focus, the reason why I wrote this, is for, you don't read this and give it away. You don't read this and, put in a garage sale or whatnot. It's something you keep in your family for generations and generations, because you as a reader, if you finish this whole book, your kids, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids can find it to see what type of faith you had. It's kind of like a family heirloom. So it stays in your generation, your bloodline. And that's really, really what I wanted to do for people who decide to take this on.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to see this book become reality?
It's funny you asked that question. I went through 5 different publishing companies to really make sure that was the way to go. And then when an individual, Christian Faith Publishing, reached out to me, and I was just doing my research, really making sure this was the one I was supposed to use, it's been a blessing. I mean, if I have any advice to new publishers using Christian Faith Publishing, just be patient. You really want to see everything there right now, the next day. But I mean, the patience, it's well worth the wait. I guess that's what I want to say. The publisher that I used, she was amazing. Always got back with me. Like I said, my biggest fault as an individual is I don't have much patience. But this is teaching me patience. But it's been a very great ride, and I appreciate it. And we're not done yet. We're still going through it. So I'm looking forward to what the future has for us and, for me and this company.
Now, when people read this book, Jesus A through Z, what do you hope is the most important thing they get from it?
Close relationship. I know your faith will build and should build, but the relationship, that's my biggest thing. And I think that will come the more you focus in your mind. I mean, it's physics. If you focus your mind on positive, great things, great things will happen in your life, blessings, miracles, or just your feeling of happiness. I mean, that's how I see, human nature. So if you're focusing your mind on Jesus throughout your day, then your relationship will grow, your faith will grow, and your, just personal aspect on Him and what He's done for you, what He is doing for you, and what He will continue to do for you in the future will obviously grow.
Well, I think this is an amazing book, and I think people are truly going to be blessed to be able to read this and find a deeper meaning for themselves as to who Jesus is in their life. The book is called Jesus A through Z by author Jordan Bullard. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, the online platforms, as well as brick-and-mortar stores. Jordan, thanks for being on the show today.
No, thanks for having me. I sure appreciate your time.
And now on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, a book I'm really interested to find out more about. The book is called Will the Real King Assassin Please Stand Up? From Sanity to Insanity by author Kim L. Smalls. Kim, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about your book and your story.
The year was 1983 when Jesus Christ woke up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from his eternal sleep. Reverend Dr. King demanded his $2 million from a white man in a plane. The FBI was out because they knew I had experienced something supernatural they wanted to know more about. I became an enemy of the state. The FBI knew if I were to tell anyone, I would not have been believed, and so I agreed to keep silent. Of course, of the black arts, I inevitably had a nervous breakdown. The human body could not withstand the effects physically. I'm mentally tired, and my imagination went wild, which was attributed to a chemical deficiency. Jesus passed judgment on the United States, which resulted in 9/11. I have been fighting a holy war since the beginning of these supernatural events. No greater love hath a man to lay down his life for a friend, the Bible says, John 15:13. I thank God for Dr. King, Osama, and the Saudis. The FBI was the ultimate antichrist. Vengeance is mine, I said. I shall repay, saith the Lord of hosts. The assault gradually faded away. The death threats were over. This is Will the Real King Assassin Please Stand Up? From Sanity to Insanity.
Now, what made you want to write this book? What inspired you?
My medical doctor urged me to write my memoirs. He said people would like to hear from a schizophrenic. I had to testify of God's goodness and grace.
And of course, working with Christian Faith Publishing, how was it to be able to take your story and then finally see it on the written page in a book form in front of you?
Christian Faith Publishing is a wonderful vehicle to convey a message. It enabled me to notify the public of his works on this Christian journey in book form and in social media prior to deliverance and post 9/11 eras.
Now, your story, who do you think is going to be your target reader, and who do you think is going to enjoy this book and get the most out of it?
My My target readers are believers of Christ and injustice, those who believe in mental health, its myths, and its truths. My target readers trust in God. They are Harry Potter fans who believe in powers of darkness. My book reaches out to all who believe in religious freedom or the lack thereof, the American flag, and the misconceptions of the integrity, equality, liberty, and justice of United States law enforcement towards African Americans.
And when people read your book, what do you hope is the most important message they get from it?
I believe the FBI in over 30 years of life experiences raises doubts as to whether James Earl Ray could have succeeded without the stroke of the pen. Whoever killed Dr. King was insane as the man in the plane, a true sociopath. My life experiences raises questions as to the mystery of the King's $2 million. The FBI was supposed to have been protecting him, knew there was a contract, and I believe who signed it. The Holy Spirit's power versus their obsession with satanics due to the color of my skin and discovery of said 2 million affected my Christian experience, hence the subject of this book.
Well, I tell you what, it sounds like an extraordinary story, and I think a story that's going to open a lot of eyes, and people really need to pick up this book. The book is called Will the Real King Assassin Please Stand Up? From Sanity to Insanity by author Kim L. Smalls. You can pick it up at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, just a few of the online sources, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And Kim, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, everybody is looking to find happiness of some sort, and I think that's really the key and the crux of this next book. The book is called Finding Me, Finding You, A Pursuit in Happiness by author Michelle Marie. Michelle, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about this story in this book.
Well, I started writing this about 4.5 years ago, and it was a time period where I was changing my entire life, and I wanted to be happy. And I already was starting to be happy, but I had to really look to God and to myself to figure out who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. So I started writing this, and it's very thought-provoking. I wanted my reader to be able to apply it to his or her own life. So it's a little daily things that I would learn, and as I would learn, I would write about it. My goal was to be happy myself, but also to inspire someone else that they can find it as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things I found interesting is this. It's not like a linear story. It's more like your daily, like you said, your daily thoughts and poems and things of that nature. What made you decide, where along the way did you decide, you know what, this is something that I've really got to share with people and make this into a book?
Well, I started writing it, and I remember the day that I went home and started. I am a teacher, elementary teacher, and I was at school, and I was talking to a sub, and he told me a story. It's my very first story, and it was about a fish. And this fish gets caught, and then after it gets caught, it goes through a struggle. And I remember him talking to us about it, and me in particular, and I went, I'm going to go write about that. And so it's my very first story in my book, and I just decided this is what I'm going to do. And I ended up with 318 pages worth of stuff. So
Wow. Now, this is your first book, I take it then?
It is.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to have this idea and then to finally see the completed project?
Well, I'd already written the book, and I had a very hard time actually submitting it because I'm quite vulnerable in it. I share a lot, and it was kind of scary to me to actually send it off somewhere. But I've had an excellent experience with them. They're very kind and helpful and inspiring, and whenever I call my publication specialist, she always gets back to me within 30 minutes or so. I feel valued, so I do enjoy that. But the actual publishing it has been amazing, to actually go and do something, and the goal be to help somebody else just feels amazing.
Now, you talk about, the vulnerability of it. And yeah, that's got to be kind of a vulnerable thing, putting yourself out there with these daily thoughts. How was that as a writer? How was that for you to be able to kind of like bare your soul for the world to see?
At first, that's why it was hard to submit it. But I have so very much changed who I am and even through the book, I'm still that same person, but I'm okay with sharing everything I went through because I'm here today and I'm happy and I love my life. I think my book will convey that.
What do you hope is the most important thing they gain from reading this book?
For me, what I learned from writing it, processed through written word and communication, is I learned that if I love myself first, then everyone around me will feel it. And then I call it it factor. And it factor is you have it, people want a piece of it, and so they want to read it and go for it. But you can. We are able to go for it.
I think this is really going to touch everyone. The book is called Finding Me, Finding You, A Pursuit in Happiness by author Michelle Marie. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and Kobo, a few of the online sources, as well as the brick and mortar stores. And Michelle, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
If you're looking for a book that really has a great inspirational story and a story that speaks to the miraculous healing power of God, then this is the book for you. The book is called Stand Alone by author Matthew Duke Rogers. Matthew, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Chris.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this book and about your story.
My story is, if you know anything about brain injury, head injuries, any of that kind of stuff, it's the leading cause of death and disability in children and young adults. I was in a car wreck May 15th, 1989. I was thrown out of a car 75 feet and I landed on my head. I died twice on the scene. Both of my breathing and heart had to be restarted on the rescue site. The wreck was followed up by a miracle rescue. The first emergency people on the scene were a husband and wife, fireman EMT, and they discovered I was barely breathing. The report classified as agonal respiration. And you have one main, aorta, I think, that pushes blood into your heart where it needs to recharge oxygen. Well, if they can hit that vein, that aorta with a needle, they can do what's called pop lactate ringers. That lactates a fluid that takes the place of blood and also stimulates your heart for oxygen or whatever. But anyway, they were able to do that to me. And when I said I was going to write a book, I interviewed the emergency room surgeon, Dr. John Webb, that worked on me that night. And I asked him how difficult that procedure was to do. He said it's difficult on a well-lit operating table in the middle of a dark highway late at night, impossible. But they did it. And so they stabilized me enough to lifeline me in North Kansas City Hospital. After several hours, the emergency room surgeon, Dr. John Webb, showed up wishing to speak to my parents. When Mom identified herself, said he wanted to speak to him in a small private room. He said, "Your son is still alive, but I don't know how." They compared the impact I hit the ground to that of somebody diving out of the 8-story building and landing on their head. The doctors didn't give me much chance of surviving the night. Well, I did make it through, and I was in a coma for 28 days. Because shortly after I came out of the coma, my mother said I began to whisper to her that I'd been with the Lord.
Such a miraculous story of how you made it through that accident. And I know the book covers so much more. Covers your therapy. It covers you going back to school. Covers issues such as abortion and your legal issues with trying to get back to school, and how the government is supposed to be protecting people with disabilities and how they didn't for you. And I know it covers a lot more, and people really need to read this book to get the full story and the full picture. But when people do read this book, what do you hope is the most important message they get from it?
When I was in a coma, a doctor friend of my parents asked them what they expected me to be like when I came out of a coma, if I ever did. And they said, hopefully he'll be able to go back to school one day. He said, Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, your goals, your expectations are too high. Your son will be lucky if one day he can count the number of fingers on his hands or the number of toes on his feet. I took my first class back into college within a year of that state. Finite mathematics at Rockhurst College in Kansas City. I got a B. So, is the Lord willing to save us, willing to help us, willing to work with us? Yeah. How come he saved me because I'm somebody special? No. Because the truth is, when the car left the roadway and I got thrown out of it, sometime during the wreck or something like that, I cried out for him to help. James, the Lord's half-brother, said, "Ye have not because ye ask not. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open to you." I mean, if you seek for the truth with a sincere and pure heart, you'll find the truth. God wishes that none should perish, but that all should come to salvation. 2 Peter 3:9. So that's the purpose of my book, is just to get people to believe.
Well, I think that's a great purpose, and I think this book is going to lead a lot of people to the Lord. The book is called Stand Alone by author Matthew Duke Rogers. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, just a few of the online platforms, as well as the brick and mortar stores. And Matthew, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable. We'll be back next week with another great group of talented authors to discuss their books, their process, and how they were able to get their manuscripts published and out there for the world to enjoy. If you're a writer that is looking for a book publisher, give Christian Faith Publishing a call today at 1-800-955-3794 to receive a free publishing kit, or feel free to visit them on the web at ChristianFaithPublishing.com. Have a great weekend, everyone.